AI is not a software boom, it's a power boom. Everyone thinks AI and the AI boom is about software. It's not. At the highest level, AI is becoming simply a power story. Yes, the models matter, the chips matter, software matters too. But underneath all of that, the real constraint is far more physical. Electricity, cooling, land, access to the grid, transformers, permits, interconnection, and people in the companies who can actually get all of that delivered on time to get the models on it. That is where I think a lot of people are looking the wrong way about it. They're chasing the shiny new app layer while the real bottlenecks are still sitting underneath the stack, quietly collecting leverage. If you want more leverage, you need to be empowered. If you understand first principles, this becomes very, very obvious. Because what is AI really? AI is just compute. And compute is just basically a machine that turns electricity into heat, electrons into tokens. That's it. You run more chips, you draw more power. You draw more power, you create more heat. You create more heat, you need more cooling, you need more infrastructure. And the moment you need more infrastructure, you leave the world of pure software and enter the world of physics, permitting, and capital. That is why I think the biggest insight here is simple. AI is not just a software revolution, it is a physical infrastructure revolution. Players like NVIDIA, Bloom, creating solid oxide fuel cells. These are going to be fuel is going to be a huge. Bloom is going to be a huge company in the next 10 years, and you're taking advantage of that a lot. You're saying in the gold rush, because in a gold rush you're going to be selling bits and shovels, right? Every gold rush, the biggest fortunes are usually built on the bottlenecks. Not on the floor. So around the loudest part of this, there's tension. Even tension is so important. Distribution. Round three that everyone needs, nobody can avoid. Very few people can supply. That is where leverage stuck. In this case, that thing is power, and the infrastructure that surrounds it will capture it. If you cannot energize the site, the data center does not matter. You cannot put racks, GPUs down. If you can't get the transformer, the project stalls. You need everything there on time. There's long leads for these things, and it just doesn't make sense. If the utility connection takes years, also the roadmap for running the project is absolutely. So if you take a look at this from the first principles point of view, the opportunity is not just build something in AI. The opportunity is actually stand in the way of a bottleneck or help remove it. That's where the money is going to be flowing in the next couple of years. That is one of the money source. And this is where I think a lot of smart people are still underestimating what is happening. The biggest tech companies in the world are starting to behave less like pure software companies and more like infrastructure buyers, energy buyers, and supply chain orchestrators. You've seen Apple has deep pockets in their infrastructure and their supply chain. NVIDIA is one of the most deeply integrated companies, both upstream and downstream of their own product. And Jensen continuously repeats this in this ethos for the company, NVIDIA. That's why. He says, we want to do as much as necessary and as little as possible. And that's what they do. They control the infrastructure, they control the supply chain, and they have the best connections and they outsource as much work as possible. They send the design of chips and fabrication instructions to the supply chain associates that they have, and it gets built. Place an order and it gets built. Why? It's because they have no choice, right? If the grid is slow, they have to work around it. If utilities are overloaded, then you have to have those direct relationships. And if co-location is the fastest route, then that's what they would do. These big frontier labs will go for co-location because it is faster. In AI infrastructure, cost saving is not the matter. Getting things up at the right speed, getting things operational faster, getting the model live faster is what is crucial. It is not about where you're saving money. And so these frontier labs, they're willing to spend top dollars, so much more money just to get things off the ground faster. And so if on site and so if on site generation is faster, then they're going to be exploring. If cooling is the issue, they're into thermal management, liquid cooling and specialized vendors. So that's where you're looking, projects and such like this. My point is, the bottleneck is migrating down the stack. It's not just that who can buy the most people, but who has access to power, who controls it, who can get the land that can supply this power, who can set the deals to make this power integration possible. Wherever the bottleneck is, the profit will also will follow that. This is the thing with business. If you look at a dam, if you have a dam in front of you and it's full up of water, and you have a tiny little hole in it that you can see through, so much of that pressure from the water is going to flow out. That is the bottleneck. You can only go at the rate of flow of which the diameter of the hole can go through. If the hole is power, and that is the hole that you're going through, then no matter how much is stock loaded, saved up in the barn for a rainy day, that is going to be flowing through because the pressure on the market to produce that power is always going to be there, unless that is not happening, for example. So, if I was thinking about this as a founder, investor, or simply someone trying to position myself where capital is going to flow for the next decade, I would stop thinking in vague terms like I want to build something in the AI, and I would start asking better questions. Okay, that's what I would be doing. Where is time to power shortest? Where can you get access to this power in the fastest possible time? Who are the people that control the interconnections? Where are long lead time breaking projects? These transformers, they're active transformers that take so long to deliver. You need them now. We can't wait longer. And so these are the questions you should be asking. It is who has relationships with these utility companies? Who knows which sites can get energized fastest? Who knows where the cooling capacity exists and how do you make them efficient? There's loads of certifications you can online, etc. Final question is, as an example, who can turn the uncertainty of getting all these deliverables done in time, who can turn that uncertainty into clarity for developers, operators, brokers, and funds? There are a lot of relationships that go into building these data centers, and either it's co-location, you have to know everything. You got to know people, you got to put the recipe in place, you need the labor, you need the capital, you need everything to coordinate very well, you need everything to be over on the same budget. And it sucks. Frankly, it sucks for the not for the developer, they make loads, but for the building company, for the general contractor. If it's a new build, you're operating on thin margins and you need everything to be done on time. It's on you. You take on the risk to build a project, and if you don't provide the value, you get dumped. And so you need to be making sure that everything's on point. This work project management is so helpful. It's super important. Everything, of course, things going on with the supply chain recently making this potentially a lot more difficult. But back to the main point, right? Because of all these questions, when you start asking these questions, like who controls everything, who has the relationship with the utility companies, etc. You need to ask these questions because that is where software becomes interesting, right? It's not a generic ChatGPT wrapper that makes it exciting. It has nothing to do with that, right? It's not another toy SaaS that you built in a weekend. But software is built around expensive bottlenecks and then physical bottlenecks too, right? I can't remember who it was originally quote, so I maybe get it down here, but I remember hearing Steve Jobs in the keynote speech saying, if you want to build great software, you have to build hardware. All the biggest companies, all the biggest labs, they are all investing into hardware. They don't care just about the software because it's not the software, it's just the interface. All of these things can be operated headlessly, meaning they don't have the screen. All of these ChatGPT, everything is going to be done via API, especially in agentic where everything is done agentically and you don't have to operate. Maybe you'll have a physical AI badge that just operates with us and exists with us. at that point, it's just going to be all API. And so that's why the infrastructure is so important. Because we're going to be leaving the side of software that is looking at the GUI to be where there is something that we can see. And probably leave switch behind. That's my thesis. I think that's going to happen. But going back to my point, software is built around expensive physical bottlenecks, and that is your guide going forward in the next decade. Okay, so what kind of software businesses keep coming out of this if you don't have any context in the physical space, if you don't have context in utility space or whatever? I'm going to highlight a couple of categories of extent. What kind of software business can come out of this if you don't have conditions in land and distribution and power and utilities, this sort of things? So there's a few categories that we can stand out to me. First, being interconnection and site intelligence. Okay? There should be a software that helps developers, brokers, operators, and funds actually understand when power is available. How much power, what's going to how quickly it can be put up, under what constraints, and with what utility relationships attached. So you can formulate this. All this data is available. You can connect this and put it into one spot. Because right now, in a lot of cases, that knowledge is fragmented, relationship driven, it's buried in PDFs, and it's scattered across brokers, utilities, councils, consultants, and engineering firms. It's all over. It's completely scattered. So whoever can organize that layer of the interconnection for site intelligence, whoever creates that is going to be creating a lot of value. Second, equipment and long lead time workflow software. If transformers, switchgear, cooling systems, and other related infrastructure are delaying projects, then there is room for marketplace, sourcing systems, lead time databases, procurement workflows, and secondary market exchanges. This one is super unsexy. If all of that was a bit of a blur for you, I understand. Basically, all the physical components of a data center that need to be brought together that take a long time to either manufacture or deliver. If you build like a really good marketplace or exchange place for this, it's not sexy, but it's super valuable. My third point would be a utility developer coordination tool, like utility developer coordination. Okay, so utilities are suddenly dealing with enormous new industrial loads from the infrastructure that they weren't built to handle. They were never built to handle this with power plants. That creates huge complication and huge complexity in intake, qualification, forecasting, screening, prioritization, also stakeholder management and communication. Most of that process is still clunky and relationship driven. So in this case, there's room for software that acts almost like a CRM operating system for large clients. Number 4, this is cooling and commissioning workflows. Okay, what we're seeing is that as AI advances, the models get better, and the hardware behind them also gets better. What we're seeing is that the data centers stay in the same size, but you don't want to just recommission them. You want to fill them with more stuff. Okay, so that means that the rack density is going to keep rising. Cooling it can't be a background issue. It is the most important issue, because if the GPUs, if the CPUs, the TPUs are melting, you're toast. So you need to keep them cool at a regulated temperature. So this becomes something. But any environment with high capital intensity, many stakeholders, compliance pressure, and other workflows is a really good candidate for vertical software if you're able to integrate into the management of cooling functions. Okay. Then number 5 is co-location and capacity matching. A lot of demand cannot be waiting for new builds. Okay? You need them in now. They need them in the base center now. You cannot wait. You see Colossus with a retrofitted factory. You see other data centers that are just moving into places. Obviously, Colossus is different with Elon Musk, person just for XAI, but it is moving into somewhere that is existing. You do it fast. Okay? That's why it's kind of an issue. So much of the demand for AI cannot wait for new builds, because it takes to erect a new data center. can be 2 to 5 years. I'm giving demand for it is yes. So the value is matching people who need compute capacity for the frontier labs now with facilities that can use this. And that is basically what we're becoming market intelligent and intelligence as a workflow problem. Yeah. So to me, the real thesis is not purely AI plus software. It is software for the physical thing that's creating that AI. So we'll be using software and AI to make infrastructure and trade. For me, that is very, very much more interesting. And on a long-term horizon, it is way more defensible than just selling a new AI device. Because if you really want to be serious about building infrastructure and building new things for the world, then you have to go to the infrastructure to be physical. You cannot just stay stuck alone in this layer of on screen. You can't stay there. You have to go to the product. You have to go to the physical side of things. So that's what it contributes. Okay. When there's a problem, when a problem is tied to real world infrastructure, the buyer pin is exactly the key point time. When all of the workflows are there, switching costs are always high, and the value can be directly linked to time, capital, and project success. This is what we want to focus on. So you're going to solve the pain points of these data centers. Now, you could solve a pain point with your AI wrapper, which costs $20 a month, and you can sell it for that much. Cost of acquisition might be $10, and you've done it well. But then where do you go from there? There is a lot more bigger infrastructure when you sell to enterprise clients. I'm bullish on enterprise, even though things are changing and it looks like software is on the decline. Well, there will be a couple of super mega giants, and you want to sell to them. Think about some of the most recent AI billionaires that have been made. They all come from selling to the frontier labs. Merkel, 22-year-old billionaires. They were made billionaires because they made a hiring platform so that all these AI companies can have better people to label their data. If you think about this, like for Waymo, if you've not heard of Waymo, it is Google's self-driving cars setup, right? Every day, when you log into something on your phone, there's a reCAPTCHA, and they're getting free label from you to label the data. You say, oh, that's a motorcycle, that's a motorcycle. It's not trying to prove that you're human. It's getting you to find out that you're just labeling data for them. They have 400,000 of free label human hours done every day for this. 400,000 hours of label they get for free every day for this label. And it's all accurate because everyone's trying to prove themselves. It's hilarious. So there's also another layer in here. And that back to my main point about the workflows and infrastructure. There's another layer there, and that is career and positioning. Maybe you're not an entrepreneur. Maybe you don't want to start a company. That's fine. The same logic still applies. You want to get as close to this bottleneck as possible because that's what it means to me. That means you need to understand the power of the substance, interconnections behind the meter generation that is private power generation, tooling system, commissioning, co-location, data center development, industrial real estate, grid modernization, and battery storage. Why? Because the people who understand these layers become disproportionately valuable as AI demands push the physical limits of the infrastructure. And if you can understand this and organize it, then it will be further ahead. Okay, in other words, the invisible experts will win. This is a way that you can be a shadow operator. You don't need to be on the front cover of Forbes to be winning this market. This is where a quiet wealth can be made. Okay? It's not because you're the loudest, but it's because you would understand how this machine of AI and technology actually works across the board. Okay? And that is probably the biggest takeaway from the whole 2020. The AI economy is not floating in the cloud. It doesn't hover up there. It is on the ground. It is in the wires that you see running along our heads. above our heads, and it is anchored in steel, copper, concrete pipes, permits, transformers, turbines, cooling loops, and substations in the end. Okay? All of this is super complex problem that's all is combined into one melting pot, and you can take what you can from it. I'm not giving you financial advice. I'm saying that the demand is outpacing the supply by extravagant levels. By extravagant matters. And it cannot keep up. And so if you are the one who is helping us catch up, helping the frontier labs keep up with that dynamic, and you will pay nothing. Yeah. All in all, the glamour sits on top. The leverage is always the main. So if you want to make waves, build wealth, and position yourself intelligently, don't just be asking what AI app should I build. Everyone can build AI apps. Ask what physical constraint is every AI winner going to run into? Then, how do I help solve that with software, relationships, financing, logistics, and intelligence? That is the John D. Rockefeller move here, folks. Not chasing the excitement, positioning yourself where the money is forced to place. And in this cycle, that looks a lot. That looks a lot like power access, power reliability, power infrastructure, and the software and services that is wrapped around all of it. That is where I think the real opportunity is in today's economy. Not AI as pure code, AI as a trigger for much. Okay? The opportunity is not in AI as pure code. Because AI as a trigger, AI as a trigger for much larger rebuild of physical infrastructure. I don't know what my notes are here. AI acts as a trigger for a much larger rebuild of physical infrastructure. And if you see that early, you stop thinking like an app builder. You start thinking like someone building a lane approach to the next community. And for me, in my opinion, that is a much better place to stand. The next AI fortunes may not come from the best money. They may come from whoever controls the bottlenecks beneath them. Thank you very much for your time. If you found it valuable, please share it with someone who needs to stay updated with AI. And have a good day. Thank you.